go again. Let's have a little bit of fun. Okay, so one of the things we're doing today is we are going to actually sand the headlights. Now, when I mentioned this to some guy in the store the other day, he said, you can't sand your plastic headlight. You will mess it up very, very royally. And I thought, wait a minute here, no, you won't, because I used to do this all the time when I worked in detail shop when plastic headlights first came out, or were becoming more and more popular. So, what we're going to do is the first thing I'm going to tell everyone when you power sand off your headlights is you have to mask off your car. And because if you don't, you're going to mess up. You will hit the paint, and trust me, it's 500 grit sandpaper, and while that's a pretty fine sandpaper, it's still enough to mess up your paint, especially when you're going at it. So here we go, and let's get to the masking. Okay, now that we have that all masked off, what you see me now doing is affixing a 500 grit sanding disc to my drill. Now my drill is going to run between 1100 and 1500 RPM. That's a good speed for that. And I see I'm applying direct pressure. Don't go on the corners, because on the corners, like you would a buffer. You can a little bit, but just keep the disc pressed flat to the glass. And what you'll see is it's starting to sand off a lot of that oxidation that happens on the types of plastic that you can see. Now what you want to do is you want to get a nice even coat. The more sanding you do here, the better your result will look in the end. Believe me, if you sand too much here, you know, it would take a lot of sanding to sand through the lens. But believe me, you probably could do it, but yeah, like I said, the more sanding you do here, the better. So, because this is where you're going to pull out most of your crap. So yeah, here you go, and let's get to the sanding of this light. Just some more sanding with the 500 grit, making sure I have it just as smooth as possible here. And then we're going to move on to the 1000 grit. Okay, here we come with a 1000 grit pad. It is a white pad. Now what you're going to notice while you do this is you're going to get a really chalky white substance that builds up. I've had it happen. It's very rare that it doesn't happen, but they'll tell you that it may or may not happen. In my experience, it always happens. So keep your cloth handy and wipe frequently, because you want to keep that pad from getting clogged up. It's a very, very, very fine powder. Basically, all you're doing with this sanding is you're taking out the big scratches that you put in there from the 500 grit. But just keep wiping and keep sanding and keep at it. And here we go. And we're going to slow it down here just a little bit so you can see me refix some of my tape. Yeah, I lost some of it. I wanted to make sure my paint stayed completely covered, so I used 2 layers of tape, and when I was down to 1 layer, I put a second layer back on. Okay, now this is where your effort really starts to pay off on the first two passes. This is, I believe, a 3000 grit, almost like a scratch pad, and we're going to do this with a wet sanding with a drill. It is important that, in fact, I believe the more water you use, the better. They say don't let the lens get dry. I believe in just saturating everything. So here we go, because this is where you're going to take out all the blemishes from that 1000 grit sandpaper, and the better you do this, the better the clarity is going to be in the end. So like I said, you can't, like along with the 500 grit and the 1000 grit, you cannot overdo this. The more you do, the clearer it's going to be. Here we go. Okay, and one final step. We're going to attach the polishing pad here now, and we're going to use about a nickel-sized portion of polish. Now this is a special plastic polish. I would imagine you can use a regular polish, but that might be a little too harsh. The one good thing about this, or the one thing about this, is you want to make sure your polishing pad is centered almost exactly in the drill. I had a little bit of hard time. As you can see here, it's kind of off camera, but it'll show up here. There we go, spinning nice and round. And we'll go ahead and put like I said, about a nickel size amount of polish on there. And this is really where the magic happens. All the prep work comes out. It comes down to this right here, and you get to see just how good a work you really did with your sanding, your polishing, and literally, the final steps here. And you can see how the lens just all of a sudden just kind of pops out as you run over it with the polish. And I added one extra step after this, which is to wax the headlights, and you'll get to see that here in a moment. But you can see with the polish just how clear it's really starting to come out. And now for a little wax just to finish everything off. Just gonna remove the tape. And one final wipe down. You folks have a good day, and thanks for watching. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below.